Yeah, thank you so much, Hannah, for inviting me and for inviting Reunion to host this amazing event. This is actually the first time that I've been to a Creative Mornings, but I've been reading and following it for so many months now, so it's just really special to be able to be hosting it for you today. This is my take on critical. So I'm really looking forward to sharing my story with you and talking to you afterwards as well. Just so you know as well, we are having a free co-working afternoon over at our co-work space after this. So if you are interested, do hang around. I hope you brought your laptops or something you can work on, and we'll take you over. It's about a 5-minute walk. So we'd love to see you over there as well. Okay, so just before lockdown in February 2020, I was working for an international development charity called Kids Club Kampala. They were based in Uganda, in the slums of Kampala. They worked across 10 different slum communities with a few sort of educational children's centres in some of the most deprived slums in the world. I was on a short-term consultancy contract working on their marketing and communications. So they were quite a small charity, but they had really big ambitions to alleviate poverty in those slum communities. I was to help them raise more funds through digital fundraising and events management and community fundraising as well. That's kind of my background. And so it was initially meant to be for 3 months to build their capacity a little bit, help them write their fundraising strategy. And then COVID hit. I moved back to Derbyshire in with my partner, and I, like a lot of people, started to think a lot more about my life and what impact I wanted to have with it as well. So I've been working for and with charities since I graduated, and almost all of them worked in the Global South, particularly East Africa for some reason. There's no special reason for that, it just was coincidence. And although I worked in fundraising rather than on the project delivery side, my roles were focused around sort of building understanding of the charity's impact for their donors. So I worked in a range of different charities, from water and sanitation charities to children's charities, education, youth charities. And I'd studied business management at uni because I didn't really know what I wanted to do at that point. And I thought that it would be a good idea to build a solid foundation, potentially, something that could just apply to many different jobs. And it did do that, but I also found it like a little bit dull, I'm going to be honest. And I realised that I didn't necessarily want a kind of corporate job. That wasn't really my path. So I decided on the charity sector post-uni because I thought that was a way that I could change the world through my work, probably a little bit naively, but as a 21-year-old, 22-year-old, that was kind of my vision. That's what I really wanted to do. But as I was sitting in my flat in Draycott trying to raise funds for this charity, I was seeing in real time the impact that the COVID lockdown was having on communities. So forced to stay in their dwellings, a lot of families were living in the slums and they just couldn't afford to eat, Generally, slum communities live hand to mouth, so what they earn at the market that day is what they feed their children with that evening. And so that money was cut off overnight with a very strict overnight enforced lockdown. And as I sat in quite relative luxury, really, in my flat in Draycott, where I could afford to buy food and I could go on walks in the countryside and I could Zoom my friends, I began to think a little bit more critically about international development. And this was a sector that I'd chosen to spend my career. I really love the sector. But I wanted to learn more about the history behind it and the theory behind it. And I saw some problems with it, and I really wanted to change it. So it kind of came from this place where it was just really frustrating and quite heartbreaking to me that such gross inequality could exist in such a rich planet. And I started to wonder if there wasn't something more that I could do about it. So I was getting a bit restless. And I did some research and I saw that the Uni of Sheffield, just up the road, did a master's in political theory, which sat across politics and philosophy. I've always wanted to do an MA, but it just never felt achievable for me on my tiny charity salary. And I don't know, I just thought my contract with the charity was extended and it was still part-time. I had some spare time. It was still lockdown. And I thought maybe I could change the sector from within. So I applied for this scholarship, and in my application I wrote a lot about international development and my frustration with the way that things were. My ambition to try and change it, and how political ideologies might enforce or mitigate inequality, how climate change is politicised, the impact of on the global south, and how charities might be perpetuating maybe some dangerous stereotypes. So I was really fortunate, and I was successful in gaining my scholarship, and off I went with these big dreams of changing the world. And I wanted to go back to studying because I thought that an academic institution was one of the birthplaces of big ideas, new ideas, fresh thinking, groundbreaking research, original thought, and I was really eager to learn and to participate in that, and my mind was just buzzing with all these new things that I was going to learn. And in the spring, just fast forward a little bit, I looked at quite a broad range of subjects, and I'd written lots of essays, and my grades were good. And it was enjoyable and challenging, researching and learning about new things, but I still felt quite unsatisfied. I just kept trying to find the reason that I'd undertaken this MA in the first place. I wanted it to be the place where new ideas were debated and created, and where new voices were being heard, and where that debate kind of triggered something new and exciting. But I was disappointed, because what I found was critical theory, and critical was the optimum word for what I was experiencing, and I was searching for positive readings and new ideas, and all I came up against was critiques of other academics' work. And each time I optimistically tried to put in, some positivity in my essays, suggesting new ways of moving forward, or a different avenue to approach, or something new that I might have learned in the sector. My lecturers told me to remove it and said that it just wasn't relevant. And I just felt like I was in this critical kind of spider web, like I was trapped inside of it, and my dreams of changing the world were just being narrowed down into picking apart other people's arguments on quite a granular level. And the more I kind of struggled with this, the more I just felt really restricted and stagnated. I just felt like I couldn't think of new ideas and be creative. And so critical theory in this instance, at that point, limited my thinking, I think. And rather than being inspired about how I could change the world, I was just struggling through the semantics of being critical of others. And I was picking apart these arguments and drawing all these negative conclusions, and it was a really confusing time. I was really fortunate to have been gifted the opportunity of a scholarship, obviously, and I was learning so much, but that critical theory just didn't suit me, and it wasn't what I was looking for at that time. So I started to reflect on the things that I loved about the charity sector, which was predominantly their focus on solutions. In my previous roles, I was balancing communicating the problems that our beneficiaries might have had whilst maintaining their dignity, really important. And it was about connecting people to causes that they might not have heard of before, and creating change that had an impact, a real impact on people's lives. And I just thought perhaps I'd gone way too far the other way, and critical theory just made me feel quite stagnant, I think. And a definition of critical theory reads that critical theory is a social theory that aims to critique and change society as a whole. And what I experienced was a lot of the critique and none of the kind of changes that I wanted to see. And so I just felt that being overly critical of others all the time just stifled my creativity. It just dimmed my lights right down. And I think I had to bring it down to create a space where I felt that I could create effective change and contribute positively in what I chose to spend my time doing. So I started to think, okay, well, maybe this is not the MA, maybe this is not for me right now, and maybe the charity sector isn't the right thing either. And I just literally went back to the drawing board. So I started drawing a huge mind map of where I thought my skills and experience lay, and what I loved doing, and what I was passionate about, and maybe what I just didn't like doing as well, and what I wanted it to look like. Because I've been in that academic environment, it reminded me of my undergrad again. And probably the one module that I really enjoyed was entrepreneurship. So that was all about, what kind of skills you might need to be an effective entrepreneur, how to kind of dream big about new ideas, and also the practical side of it. So, how to write a business plan or do some research. And I just wondered if this might be it. Like maybe, I've always wanted to run my own project and my own organisation, and I didn't know what that looked like at that point. But I just felt like maybe this is the right time. After 2 years of working from home and being without, friends or family and peers, of critical theory, I was just really ready to build something positive. So I took all of that good stuff that I enjoyed about working with charities, so like the community building aspects of it, and telling people stories and event planning and raising awareness and just connecting with people. Just really what I just love to do in the charity sector was that, connecting with people. So, as I say, I went back to this drawing board, and my top focuses were around purpose, people, creativity, culture, togetherness after, such a long time apart. And that's part of the reason why we're called Reunion as well. It was about kind of bringing everything together, and it felt exciting. Maybe I could do something like that with one business and one idea. It felt quite disparate at that point, and I was trying to figure out how I could bring that together into one home. So I kind of started thinking about the last couple of years. Everyone's working from home and being away from the people we love and staying inside and cancelled events and no commutes and all of that stuff that now actually feels like quite a long time ago and quite surreal. But the way that me and my partner made it work was just by eating. We just ate so much, like all the time, and it was amazing. Like we'd buy cookbooks and we'd just try new things and we'd be really creative, and it was a bit of a competition, like who could do the best meal. And I loved that aspect of it, and I thought, I just love food. Like I'd worked in some kitchens in Latin America before, and that was really inspiring to me. And I just thought, food, yeah, food, okay, food is it. I love food. But then maybe I thought, well, yeah, food, great, but it just didn't feel like enough. I don't know. My partner and I were just walking to Balfour, and we just moved in. I think it was like November 2020, we moved to Balfour. And I spotted a building for let on the high street, and it had an upstairs section. And I just thought, co-work space, like, yeah, this is it. So what if we combined a cafe and a co-working space? And what if that meant like community events and networking events and hosting groups and being welcome to everybody, and something that's affordable, and people could come and work, and it was in their town, it was local, and prioritising the planet. And that was kind of the idea behind it. Somewhere that you could be creative and form those connections. So yeah, I paused my MA and I started researching. I researched like a lot. And to cut a long story short, obviously here we are. We got everything, we received some advice, we got the loans, we put down the lease, and it was exciting. It wasn't what I originally planned. I wanted it all to be in one building, but there just wasn't the right thing in Balfour. And actually that means that obviously we've got these two sister sites, which I think actually do work quite well. But the whole experience was just amazing. Like it was so creative, just super exciting, and I was just thinking, this is something that I can do for myself. And I know a lot of you are doing that and are in the process of doing that as well. And you just feel like this energy and this excitement. And yeah, I was just super excited to maybe create some economic potential and opportunity, and just to bring something a bit different to the town. And I think, just combining it with everything together. So that's what Reunion stands for. So it's about community and the deli and co-work as well. And so we've now been open for 3 months, and it's been definitely a roller coaster. It's been amazing, and I've learned so much about so many things. But since we've opened, something has re-emerged. It's come back to haunt me from my MA. And it's critical thinking of myself all the time, all of the time. It's so wild. When I was building this business, before I opened it, it was so creative and fun and exciting. And I was just just raring to go. Like I was so excited about it. And now that I'm open, I've just realised that I'm just really critical of myself, just all of the time. And it's just something that didn't occur to me was my relationship with critical and criticism. I paused the MA because I didn't get along with the pedantic criticism or destruction of other people's arguments. Like, that's not what I was about. But now that I was finally working for myself and dreaming of building this business, which I've always wanted to do, I realised that I was turning that critique onto myself. Why wasn't I working hard enough? Or why didn't that lease work out? Or why did I forget to send that email? And what if my idea doesn't work? And what if it's stupid? And I don't know, like, why have I been so self-critical? And I learned a number of things from my MA, and they weren't just all academic. So I learned to see how being overly critical is just damaging for me. Like, it really just dims my light, my energy and my enthusiasm. And so this time I was able to spot that much quicker. I felt like I'd learned that. I was like, no, this is too much. This is wrong. And maybe what if I was doing the best that I could within my circumstances and within my constraints and the amount of hours that everybody has every day? I know that I'm working super hard at it. And as anyone who starts their own project knows, it is tiring. And maybe it's not possible to do everything I want to do all at once. Like, maybe it's just unrealistic. I don't know. It's a big lesson for me, I have to say. And so I'm bringing this kind of self-critical spiral to an end. I've decided. It's been 3 months and I've had enough. And so obviously being critical and being critiqued is a necessary part of life. Of course it is. But for me, that's my biggest lesson about it. It's just that overt kind of criticism can really stifle me and stifle new ideas. And if I think we're overly intimidated by critiques, if that's what we're thinking about when we're creating something new, then it can discourage us. It can discourage like innovative thinking. And I just found that it could be a bit of a limiter of growth and of taking risks and of just being brave. And yeah, as I say, critical definitely has its place and it's a necessity. And it shouldn't, I just don't think that it should outweigh the gains we make by focusing on creating meaningful relationships and fostering growth and connection and positivity. And that's how I don't know, I just think when we support each other, like, so many new and positive things can happen and be creative. And if you've got any tips about being less self-critical, then please could you share them with me afterwards? I'd really appreciate that. And that's it. That's my talk. That's everything.